Welcome, I'm the Deadwood Jedi. This is going to be another Raid Shadow Legends video. I'm on the account of Caleb Rocks. He had come to me asking for some account work, basically rebuilding his clan boss team. He was struggling a little bit, stuck on Nightmare, doing, I think, 3 keys on Nightmare, or 2 keys, or, you know, just not the result that he wanted, and felt like he should be doing Ultra Nightmare. And so that was our goal, is to take his clan boss team up into Ultra Nightmare, and I was happy to do that. You know, this is a service I do offer on my website, so you guys are looking for help with your accounts and you don't mind having somebody else do the work for you, I'm more than happy to. It is one of the ways that I support myself doing this. And so definitely that's an option for you all. So anyway, I was doing a little bit of work there, and I thought this was kind of an interesting team that I ended up building, because it's one that I don't showcase very often. I think it is actually rather difficult to make work, simply because the speeds required are very unique. There's a very small range, so there's not a lot of flexibility, and then the high end speed is very fast, so it can be a little bit tricky. But you know, after playing around the free to play, my brain is more into a, you know, workaround kind of approach to things, and I think we were able to find a good one here. So I kind of wanted to show this team to you and showcase, you know, a little bit of what it can do. And so basically we were able to take this team into Ultra Nightmare, and you'll notice that I have Fushan, I have Septimus, I have Farrakhan the Fat, I've got MythEater and Demitha. And what we're going to be building is a MythEater team. This is on the website, and I'll have it linked down below too, in case you guys want to check it out. But it's a very cool team, right? You're able to utilize a MythEater and a Demitha and make a completely unkillable team for Ultra Nightmare or Nightmare without having to change any speeds. In fact, this does work with Ninja, but the speeds are different for that, and Ninja's always a little finicky, so I prefer not to use them. Quite frankly, if we don't have to, I'm not going to do it. But anyway, this team is very good, and I think 2 key is a very reasonable goal with this team, even though the speeds are pretty normal, right? You know, the hard part is MythEater's super fast, like 286 speed, which is extremely fast. But because of that, we brought in Fushan. We weren't actually able to get to 286 speed on this account. I mean, that kind of should give you an indication of where the gear is at here, which is always the biggest hurdle. But because we couldn't get there, I was like, well, you know what? Fushan with that aura might make it worth it. Building an unkillable team is so much easier than trying to build a traditional team. You don't have to deal with defense or HP or anything like that. I'm actually going through the struggle myself on my free-to-play. So much easier. And so if we can have Fushan utilize that speed aura to get us up to speed, it's going to make things so much easier for us. So that's what we ended up doing, and it kept the speeds very reasonable, and everything's actually working very nicely with this team. So I'm actually really impressed with it. It's doing better than I really thought it was going to. But yeah, we can kind of talk about the team a little bit. Fushan here, 154 speed, right? We turn off his A2. We don't need it, and that way we can utilize Giant Slayer more fully with this build. Now, Fushan does bring a decreased defense. We're not actually counting on this, and you'll notice Fushan is not booked in this team. This is definitely going to be a huge damage boost when we do, but that's okay. We don't need Fushan fully booked right now to start off with. Also, you might notice crit rate's only 73%. We'll get to that in a minute. Septimus, right? 135 speed. There is a little bit more range with Septimus, but like Fushan, by the way, Fushan, this is part of the reason why this is such a difficult team to use. Fushan's 179 speed. True speed is 179. His actual speed obviously is 154, but with the aura, his true speed is 179. That is with 2 perception sets. I can't do it with 1. I can't do it with 0. I needed 2. 3 was too many. Like, it's very precise speed numbers that we need on these champions. So you definitely have to check a lot in the calculator. It is much harder using a speed aura, because that obviously is going to throw some things off. But it is very doable, and that's kind of what I wanted to show. Anyway, we've got Septimus here. Obviously, 74% crit rate. Again, we're building this for clan boss, so I can really kind of take some liberties as far as crit rate and crit damage stats go, and that's all because we have Farrakhan the Fat. Now, 2 things about these last 2 champions, right? Farrakhan the Fat has this ally attack skill, which we all know about, but more importantly, it brings an increased crit rate buff. Because we have Demitha also in this comp, this means we're going to have increased crit rate and crit damage on Septimus and Fushan for the whole fight. It's a nice little bonus, and we can build our champions with that in mind. On top of that, we also have Septimus here, who has that passive ability to extend the duration of debuffs, which is kind of massive, really, when it comes down to it. So being able to extend the duration of those debuffs means that eventually, at some points in this fight, we can have a full debuff bar. It's not consistent, not all the time, but because Farrakhan the Fat also brings in HP burn, brings in 2 poison debuffs, he brings in decreased defense as well. And I do have accuracy on all of these champions. We are able to fill up the debuff bar at least most of the time, at least some of the time, right? On some runs at least. So it's not a perfect solution, right? We still don't have weaken in this team. That's definitely something I would love to have. But even in spite of that, I think we're going to get a really good result. You don't need everything. That's kind of the jigsaw of clan bosses, bringing in what you can, where you can. Obviously, ManEater. Now, ManEater 263 speed. Remember, 286 is what we need. That's the true speed. 263 gets us there. 2 speed sets, not 3, not 1, 2. But it's a very, very tight speed. But we were able to build him and build a fair amount of crit rate. Not 100%, but 88% is going to be pretty good for us, I think, in this team. And then, of course, we have Demitha. Now, Demitha is used in other areas of this game for this account. So I wanted to be a little bit, careful about how we chose everything here. But in general, this is going to work for us at 147 speed. Not really going to be super useful in other areas of this game either. But a good, a simple swap of the boots should fix most of that if that becomes necessary. Anyway, but 147 speed is going to be working just fine. And because of the presets I have here on Demitha, on ManEater, on Farrakhan the Fat, we are able to go full auto right from the jump, which I think should be good. And so that's the team here. So I'm going to finish filling out the masteries. I haven't done that yet. I'm going to finish filling those out and then we'll jump the run. If you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the next one that comes out. And of course, if you enjoyed today's music, we have that SoundStripe link down below in the pinned comment description of this video, and you can use code DeadwoodJedi to save 15%. Okay, let's jump in here. All right, so as we start, you can see we start off with the A1 from ManEater. That's really not going to be too crucial. We just need to delay his A3, which should be coming up next here. And there it goes. Now we've blocked the debuffs. We are going against Spirit, so this does show it's a affinity friendly team, right? But we block all the debuffs. We stay unkillable. That's totally fine. And then we're going to come through here. Now you'll notice the Demitha extends the duration of all those buffs. Also heals us, which is great right before the stun. And then we kind of come through. Now what's going to happen here is ManEater normally will take 2 turns. Right now they're just taking the 1 as we're getting set up. We get that block damage from Demitha. So Demitha protects us for the first AoE. ManEater is going to protect us for the second AoE and for the stun. On Nightmare, the 4-3 champion, and we have one champion going at a 4-3 ratio. That is Farrakhan the Fat here. That champion will need to avoid taking the stuns. The only person that's vulnerable. And by avoid, we just mean like, they could die. So best not to, right? So I have 2 spirit champions in here, right? I've got Farrakhan, but I've also got Septimus to make sure that Septimus would take that stun instead of Farrakhan if that becomes an issue. But it should work on an Ultra Nightmare. Everybody's covered, so we don't have to worry about it at all. One of the interesting things is, right, obviously we get that increased crit rate and crit damage buff there from Farrakhan, and then Demitha is going to extend that right after so that we keep that up on these champions the whole time, which is great. It makes it a lot easier to build your champions when you only have to build a 70% crit rate as opposed to, 100%. Now, obviously, you're seeing we have a lack of debuffs up right now, and this is definitely the problem, right? Decreased defense from Farrakhan, decreased defense from Fushan. Fushan's not booked, so it's definitely going to be inconsistent. Farrakhan is like a 30% chance to place as well, and Septimus isn't always going to extend the duration of buffs or debuffs. I actually think that's a good thing, right? Because it's showing us that this team doesn't have to, you don't have to be perfect to be able to get really good results, because I think we should still get really good results from this squad. I'm not sure if we're gonna get a 2-key Ultra Nightmare team, but we should definitely be having a very solid 3-key team. And so that's kind of what you're being able to see here. And look, we're able to put those debuffs up pretty quickly. And with Septimus doesn't have to be a super extender, but just doing a little bit of extension every time can really help to add up so that we do fill up that debuff bar surprisingly quickly, right? And that's definitely something that we want to do. Septimus also has that Brimstone, which does a lot of damage. It's one of the reasons why I chose him. I figure that's, it seems like that would go to waste otherwise, and it's such a big damage boost to a team. It seemed like it would make a lot of sense. I did consider going a different route. I considered bringing in somebody like Narma to really put up poisons or extend those as well, and I think that could have been a very good result. But Instead, I opted for the raw damage from Septimus. I just seemed like it made the most sense. We were stuck with Fushan because of the speed aura and needing that to make this team work. There wasn't a lot of alternatives as far as that goes. And then once we were stuck with Fushan, I knew that, you know, one, the fact that he wasn't going to be booked and probably wouldn't be booked for a while. And two, the other options we had for us, while he might not be the optimal choice, I felt like Farrak and the Fat would be the next best choice to bring in. And then combining him with either Narma or Septimus would be the nice way to go. And considering the affinities and what that meant for Nightmare Clan boss, it seemed like Septimus would be the proper choice here, though I could easily see going a different way, right? I think Narma's a really good choice as well, and we could easily gone with that and just gone with a traditional way of filling up the debuff bar with poisons, maybe a little bit more consistent than what we have now. But even so, as you can see, we're getting pretty good results, and this is not a particularly good affinity for us, not particularly bad either. It's just, it is what it is. But yeah, you can see we're doing a pretty good job. Now imagine once we book Fushan, we can have that decreased defense coming at the top of every cycle, right? It's on a 3-turn cooldown. We can actually time that out. We'll have a better chance of landing it, so we never really run out of it. There's a lot more potential here going with that. Once we can get that going, I think would be really, really good for this team. But in general, what you see is what you get. And I think we're going to be able to put up pretty decent numbers here. Obviously, you know, getting Fushan booked would be a big help, but yeah, I like this team. I think it's kind of cool and neat and different approach. Basically, MythEater takes a double turn between the AoEs and a double turn before the AoEs, allowing him to stay on that 5-turn cooldown, and then he can block the debuffs for us all the way through and make us unkillable for both the second AoE as well as the stun, which is pretty remarkable, I would say. So that's for me, I think one of the coolest things about this comp is being able to utilize these champions, and the speeds are pretty reasonable outside of MythEater. So anyway, I'll stop rambling on. I have a tendency to do that. We'll let this carry on. You guys will kind of jump towards the end here and see what result we get. I'm actually pretty curious to find out. Not too bad, right? 38 million. That's a 2-key damage team. Unbooked Fushan. That definitely makes a big difference. I would say that's a pretty good result. You know, one of the biggest detriments to team damage is not having decreased defense up for the full fight. Getting Fushan booked would fix that for us. So all in all, I really like this team. You know, there's some little nuances I can point out. Let me do that while we go through the gear of these champions and like some little things and tweaks that I would do, that I did to kind of improve the damage that we did. All right, let's start off looking at MythEater here. Obviously, 263 speed is the hard part. And to be honest, when I first logged on this account, we were pretty close to there. So I didn't have to make a lot of gear changes. The problem was it was kind of the fastest gear we had on the account. So became a little bit tricky trying to get to those numbers. I was able to, you know, use some glyphs, kind of helped a lot. Rolled the banner and like, you know, some little things kind of help, but you know, we're still stuck with defensive chest plate, right? I was able to find some crit rate gloves that kind of worked for us, but it's not like they are insanely good. Obviously we could get some like maybe some 6-star speed boots to kind of substitute in here. Wouldn't be a bad way to go to like kind of improve some of the stuff, but we were able to kind of, you know, figure it out a little bit at a time here. You know, one of the things obviously with the masteries, whenever you're doing these masteries and you have MythEater in your team, you got to remember that he's a unkillable champion. That means your team will take damage. So making sure to go and take Grim Resolve so that you're losing, when you're doing more damage when you're under damage on HP, right? And also to take Life Drinker, so that you heal up more when you have less than 50% HP. Both those are nice little bonus things that you can do to kind of help you out. And then, of course, the last mastery, which is almost mandatory for MythEater teams. It's really important that you try to take this whenever you can, because the easy way to up your damage is Retribution. And basically gives you a 50% chance of counterattacking when you lose 25% of your HP or more. This is why Unkillable is sometimes preferred to block damage, because you're going to lose damage. You get some free counterattack hits in there. That can be really, really strong. So those are kind of some of the masteries that I tend to go with as far as like building my champions out, especially with MythEater teams. Now, we're only unkillable for like half the time, and the myth is the other half of the time, right? Or like at least 1 out of every 3 attacks where we're going to block that damage instead of being killable for it. The myth is great for that. Now, obviously, I want to make sure I had no special sets to make this work, right? No speed sets, no perception sets. And we were able to find the sweet spot at 147 speed with the aura from Fushan. Like I said, though, Fushan's aura, like the speeds are really, really tight, especially with the Mytha here. So we had to be really careful about that. And so I did my best to build her up, give her some crit damage, some crit rate. She's not an attack heavy champion, only 1 out of her 3, so it's not really necessary. But I felt like it wouldn't hurt. Putting her in something like a toxic set might not be a bad idea, but I don't really think it's necessary. Part of the reason why it's not necessary is we got Farrakh and the Fat. Farrakh and the Fat obviously is an amazing champion, brings a lot to the table. Now I tried to build him as well as I could, right? We couldn't quite get 100% crit rate, but I think 85, 95% is pretty darn good. I'm not really upset with that. I think it's 90% right now. More importantly, we have the accuracy, we have the buffs and the debuffs that he brings, and that's going to be the important part. We still have some stuff we can roll up on this champion. Most of these champions have some gear that can still be rolled, and I generally leave it that way because, one, I want to leave room for if the owner of the account has better stuff they want to put on there, if they feel like they're going to farm something soon. I don't want to waste a lot of silver on subpar gear. And so sometimes I'll just roll it to a minimum level, make sure we have enough silver so we can roll some things better. Or I'm like, I don't even know if this is worth rolling, right? 5-star crit damage amulet. Let's just wait to get a 6-star before we roll it up. We're doing pretty good right now, right? Those are little things that I try to do when we're building this up. Keep an eye on the future of this account, right? Those kinds of things. And then we also have, by the way, 2 perception sets. It's fine. 1 or 2, doesn't really matter. His speeds are actually pretty flexible, thankfully. Then we have our 2 legendary champions, right? We've got Fushan, who again, very specific speeds. 2 perception set works really good on him, but you can see, we were able to build him pretty darn good. 70% crit rate, just what we want. Good crit damage, good attack. Obviously, we can bump all those numbers, but you'll notice like the 6-star amulet I've rolled up all the way, but the 5-star ring, the 5-star banner, I did not, because I don't feel like that's really going to be what we want to roll up all the way on these. I want to wait for the better pieces to come by that we just really, in some respects, don't have yet. But he's going to be great for us. And obviously Septimus is the last one. It's a really good champion as well. I really enjoy Septimus and Clan Boss. He was in my original Clan Boss team for a very long time. But, getting those accuracy numbers up, and just kind of hitting as hard as we can is kind of the goal here. So obviously we got some 5-star gear. I'd love to take the 6, but otherwise pretty solid build, I'd say, kind of getting us where we need to go. So that's the team. That's the build. I mean, a 2-key Ultra Nightmare result is way better than I was expecting. I think it's way better than was being asked of me as well. So this is a really good result with room to improve it, obviously, right? Like, first off, when we get enough speed on the account, we don't have to use Fushan as a speed aura. We could bring in somebody that maybe fits this account a little better, right? Someone with a weakened debuff, for an example, right? We don't have to use Septimus either, right? There's lots of champions that we can substitute in for both of them. And so this definitely has room to improve. The builds on MythEater are not great, right? We don't have a lot of damage on them. We have a defensive chest plate instead of attack. So there is a lot of room, I think, in general to improve this account, which is good. I like leaving it with that kind of level of room to improve type of thing. And then, we can always switch over to a better team, a different team, when we get the champions for it. There's no seeker on this account, so building something like a Myth Fu, not to mention we didn't have the speeds for it, but building something like that wasn't a viable alternative for us. If we can get those kind of champions, all of a sudden we might have some some possibilities there, some really, really good stuff. So anyway, I was just really happy with it, and I wanted to share that with you guys. It's kind of a fun team. It's a little bit different, a little bit off the beaten path, but really, really effective. So anyway, hopefully you guys found that enjoyable, and that's all we got for today. So don't forget to subscribe, and until next we meet, I'm the Deadwood Jedi.